All right, well, welcome Facebook Live. This is Brad Bodis, and this is the 14th episode of Facebook Live that we've done, or we are doing here at Bond and Bodis. To remind our viewers, we started doing these when folks first started staying home at the beginning of COVID, and we're just trying to provide information to people on important topics, both financial as relate to our law practice and other important COVID-related issues. The Bond and Bodis law offices are located in Alabama, Mississippi, and in the Knoxville area in Tennessee. And during the COVID pandemic, we are offering absolutely free initial consultations with an experienced attorney. So if you're having financial problems, we know a lot of people are, as a result of COVID, please reach out and get some advice. So for today's show, today's episode, we are extremely fortunate, people. This is, if you're watching this video, then you're somebody that's on social media. You know that there are all kinds of stories about COVID. Some of them are true, some are not true. Some are, in my opinion, just frankly hysteria. So today we actually have a licensed practicing physician, an expert, somebody that I respect greatly, my friend, Dr. Larry Gazzini. Dr. Gazzini is with Brookwood Internal Medicine. Larry is a founding physician there at Brookwood Internal Medicine, sees patients each and every day. And I can tell you from also knowing Dr. Gazzini socially, that he also dispenses a lot of medical advice when he's not in the office seeing patients, because a lot of people trust him for advice and with their questions. So Larry, Dr. Gazzini, thank you for being here with us today.
Well, Brad, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. This is certainly a topic that has been hanging on us like a cloud for quite a while.
Larry, if you would, for our viewers, let them know your educational background and about your practice and what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. I am originally from Montgomery. I went to Auburn University in Montgomery for undergrad, then UAB for medical school, and then did internal medicine residency training here in Birmingham at the Baptist hospitals and got board certified. Initially I was in practice at Baptist Princeton for a couple of years with a Dr. Juan Johnson there, who was wonderful to work with. Did a year of emergency medicine, and now I've been at Brookwood doing basically adult primary care for 25 years now.
Well, that's great. I'll also share with our viewers that Larry is a devoted father, a devoted husband. He's a Christian, and he's also a pretty darn good bowler. Just as an aside, Larry bowled in college and still bowls in a league regularly, competitively, and it's just some insight about Larry's background. But 3 children, and he's also a grandfather now. Congratulations on that to you, Larry.
Yes.
So, Larry, we only have about an hour, and there are a lot of important issues that I want to touch upon and give you a chance to talk about. And just for our viewers' benefit, I'm going to try to break this down into the following areas. First, the overall progression of COVID-19. Then we'll narrow it down to COVID here in the U.S. and within Alabama, where Dr. Gazzini sees patients on a regular basis, the various treatments that we have and the effectiveness of those treatments, whether or not you should wear masks. That's an important topic, and I know something that is near and dear to Dr. Gazzini. We're going to go through some of the data here in Alabama and the surveillance reports that are out there. Yeah. Hospitalization rates, recovery rates. And then at the end, we're going to take some questions for our viewers. Now, it is important to emphasize here that Dr. Gazzini is here as a guest to give his perspective on general issues pertaining to COVID. None of you should rely on any specific medical advice Dr. Gazzini has given you at this point. If you have medical concerns, you should certainly see your own physician and get specific advice as to your medical issues. Larry, that's my legal disclaimer for you there.
All right.
I thought we did that in.
So now we can have fun. All right.
That's right. Why don't you start just with that first topic and talk about the progression of COVID-19? We've heard terms like the Chinese flu. We've heard a lot of different theories as to how COVID first came into being and how it spread. Why don't you give us your perspective, if you would?
Sure. Yeah. Obviously, everybody's heard of Wuhan, China, which seems to be the area that it first started gathering attention. There's all types of conspiracy theories about this. There is a famous virus lab that's right there in the Wuhan area. Our own CDC was actually helping fund some of this research and such. And so with the virus, first becoming prominent in that area, how much of this was something leaked from the lab or such is going to be hard to say. I would imagine the area is probably pretty heavily infested with bats, which this virus comes from. I will say the two previous viruses, SARS and one called MERS, were much more deadly. They had much higher mortality rates. And so this particular one is it's a milder version of SARS, still bad, still extremely bad. But again, I wouldn't think that it was necessarily a bioweapon of any sorts. But obviously, it came to the attention in China. China isn't exactly upfront with some of the facts about COVID-19 as we would like. First, it was felt to only be, or we were told it was only spread from bats to humans and that we didn't have anything to worry about. But the first physician in China that started getting the word out that it did transmit from person to person, interestingly, he was one of the very victims of COVID himself. Yeah.
It's sad.
Yes, it is.
And then it spread from China. First stories we heard were in Europe, I guess.
Yes, it hit. Italy and Spain and France were hit very aggressively with this. They went on a fairly aggressive lockdown early on. It seemed to hit northern Italy first, and then started going south. And then for us, New York obviously got hit hard. New Jersey, Mardi Gras, was just before we started appreciating that COVID was over here. And I think, unfortunately for New Orleans, Mardi Gras attracted enough Europeans to go there that New Orleans had a really bad blow from COVID early on as well.
Dr. Gazzini, I seem to recall before COVID became such a big topic here in the United States, you had have a family member in Italy that you were in communication with, and you alluded to the early lockdown they did there. Maybe you can share what you heard from your cousin there.
Yeah, I've got my cousin Alessandro was kind enough to email with me back and forth, and fortunately they were as a whole, as a people, they were very aggressive with the lockdown. They were able to get out for food and limited things, and even other areas of Europe. I've got another friend in France that if you went to the grocery store, you stood in line. The people generally there were very patient. When masks became available, when the utility of using masks became available, generally they were very accepting of wearing their mask and getting through it because they just wanted it to be over as fast as possible. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to get into decisions that have been made. I don't want to get into political decisions here, but I know that mask wearing and social distancing are very important to you, and we'll get into both of those items. I know you also, I think, know some people that actually traveled up to New York and were involved with treatment in the early days, and the hospitals as they filled up there in New York initially. What can you tell us about the overcrowding there?
Yeah, that is something for us that's just very hard to understand. We weren't really getting a lot of, pictures from emergency rooms and such. And of course, a lot of that's patient confidentiality and such. But, for example, Samaritan's Purse built a 68-bed field hospital right in Central Park that was associated with Mount Sinai Hospital because there was just a tremendous amount of overflow. Right. So many people were showing up at one time that it's hard to imagine that, in hospitals, we know there's oxygen ports on the walls and such. Well, in these hospitals, every single oxygen port was being used, was hooked up to a patient. And even then, they still had people in the emergency rooms that were oxygen starved and such. And there was even a report in the Wall Street Journal that there was even a shortage on oxygen, getting oxygen up in that area, which is just so hard for us to fathom. But Samaritan's Purse got up there quickly. They put in a 68-bed field hospital where they were, again, seeing overflow from, again, Mount Sinai Hospital. But, we also saw where FEMA sent 85 refrigerated trucks because of the overflow in the morgues in the hospitals up there. Those kind of things, I mean, it's just like an atomic bomb went off in the area. It was just that devastating.
And I think that that's a good tie-in to where we are in Alabama right now with the progression of the disease and why there's a concern from what we witnessed in New York. Tell us about where we are in Alabama now.
All right. In Alabama, the hospitalization rate has just been sharply going up through April. And when I'm talking about COVID patients in hospitals in Alabama, these are confirmed COVID patients. And if you're sick enough to be in the hospital, you're sick enough to be on oxygen and such. But in April, we ran around the 400 number, May 500, June, it was the upper 600s. And by July, it just took off markedly. And we've been as high as over 1,600 patients, hospitalized in Alabama with COVID on a single day. Interestingly, hospitals in Alabama are not required to report their COVID patients, but generally they do so voluntarily. But one of the frustrations is as you get more and more patients in, you have enough of them that are sick enough to be in the intensive care units. And so the intensive care units have been running very thin. There was a report in the newspaper this weekend about a gentleman in Chilton County that because of lack of intensive care unit beds had to go all the way up to Nashville to go to Vanderbilt because there were no ICU beds for him to go to over that weekend. The numbers of the ICU beds will fluctuate, day by day. But one frustration is when these people end up on the ventilator, they tend to be on the ventilator for an extended period of time. And that just kind of builds up the numbers there. And so as much as I hate mandates, we really did need the mask mandate because the numbers just kept climbing. And so Governor Ivey did a good decision. Deborah Bricks, who's been on the news several times at a lot of the presidential conferences on this, she came to Alabama and had a one-on-one talk with Governor Ivey.
Wow.
And I think that had a lot to do with why we got our mask mandate passed.
Well, I am happy to say I am seeing more and more people wearing masks. Still not in the numbers that you or I would like to see. And we'll talk about the effectiveness of masks. Larry, there are conspiracy theories about hospitals inflating the numbers of COVID patients. I'll just share a story of my own. I was kind of surprised. A good friend of mine's father, who's in his 80s and has had some health problems, was diagnosed with COVID. They initially hospitalized him, but after just a day, sent him home. Said, "You don't need to be hospitalized," and he thankfully recovered. Is there incentive for hospitals to inflate the number of COVID patients that they're treating?
Well, I know that any of the COVID deaths that happened, that information goes down to the Alabama Health Department, and they review each of those, to make certain that it is okay to put, primary cause of death, COVID, on the death certificate there. And so that gets reviewed. For each diagnosis that somebody comes into the hospital with, the insurance companies already kind of have a preset amount of money that they anticipate is necessary, for the care for that particular condition. Because COVID patients sometimes are in the hospitals for a longer length of time. The payment for COVID has been a higher than normal payment. And again, it's just for the length of time these people require being in the hospital sometimes. But that is still one of these things that is under the oversight, the insurance companies, they get to review these charts. Medicare gets to review these charts. And so, even if there is a push that way, Medicare and the insurance companies have some opportunities to, to question that if they see it's worth doing. Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the treatments that exist for COVID patients, some of the touted treatments, and the effectiveness of those treatments from the perspective of a physician that sees patients on a daily basis. Tell us about the treatments for COVID.
Okay. Now, COVID is a new disease for which there is a steep learning curve. And so there is constantly being things learned. Early on, we were told steroids were absolutely a treatment that had no place in treating COVID. And interestingly, treating it early, steroids may actually work against you a little bit. But if people have moderate to severe disease, we've now found that steroids do, in fact, reduce mortality and the hospital time. And so that's something that came about in just recent studies. And steroids have been around for a long time. They're inexpensive. And so this was something initially we were told was totally contraindicated. Don't even think about it. But we've learned that does help. But they do steroids. There is a number of people getting what's called convalescent plasma, which just means people who have recovered and convalesced and are over COVID. These people are giving blood, and so the antibodies are drawn out, and the antibodies are used as a treatment as well. There's a study drug that's been shown to shorten the days of how long people are in the hospitals with COVID, called remdesivir. It's still an investigational drug. There's not enough of it for what we really need to do. So not everybody necessarily gets it, but still probably most of them are getting it now. The drug that's on everybody's mind, because we see it in social media all the time, is what's called hydroxychloroquine. It's been around a long time. It's mainly been used to treat malaria in the past, but a lot of the disorders such as rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, hydroxychloroquine has been used for years to treat these things. And back when SARS broke out around late 2002, 2003, they started doing studies in cell cultures. And so these are in lab, or what we call in vitro studies, but in lab. And so in a lab, you can do things that you can't necessarily do in the human body. You can, put doses of medications into cells, in a petri dish that you can't, without killing somebody, put them in a person. But anyway, these in-lab or in vitro studies seem to show some promise with SARS. But over time, there's, a lot of Plaquenil was used early on with COVID-19. It was used overseas, and then in hopes that it would do something here, a number of studies opened up. And so there's been a number of studies looking at Plaquenil here. Because Plaquenil or hydroxychloroquine has been around for a long time, it's available. But interestingly, so much of it was being used up. Some patients with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis were having difficulty getting it for a period of time because people were using it for COVID. But in the studies, there's been a variety. There's in-hospital studies where you have your control group and then you have your test group. When those have been done in the hospital, you see no significant difference as far as lowering mortality or death rates. And so people complain that, well, you're not giving it early enough. You're waiting until they're too sick. And so they did studies for mild disease, people who were still outpatient, not sick enough to be in the hospital, which is fortunately most people. But those studies as well just did not show any statistically significant benefit from taking hydroxychloroquine. Then people were still saying, well, you're still not giving it early enough. And so they've done what they've called post-exposure studies, where people who have had a significant exposure for someone, they've been around someone in close contact for 15 minutes or more, no mask, but you find out this other person has COVID. And so they did studies where they put, half on hydroxychloroquine, half on a placebo. And gosh, there's been a study with as many as 2,300 people doing this. And still you see no difference in outcomes between the hydroxychloroquine or the placebo. There has been dozens and dozens of studies already done with Plaquenil or hydroxychloroquine, and no benefits really been seen with it. And it does get frustrating when you see groups that call themselves frontline physicians, and they get in front of a camera and they say, we have a cure. We have a cure. In that sense, those physicians are given a testimony. They're given a testimony of, their experience with it. But the problem there is there's no paper trail. There's no way to trace down to see exactly how those patients turned out. There's no paper trail to see if those patients did indeed have COVID. And so those people are expecting you to just accept what they say with zero accountability. And, most of us are not looking to go to a physician with zero accountability, but that's what those people are promoting. When you do a study, you've got a paper trail. Other people can look at the data, can sort it out, can decide for themselves as well. But when you have a group like frontline physicians, they're just expecting you to just accept what they say, no questions asked.
Larry, attorneys, we use a term, anecdotal evidence, where people give statements as to their individual experience. Now, one of the positives about COVID in my mind is that the cure rate, most people, vast majority of people recover from COVID. So when somebody says, hey, I took hydroxychloroquine and I recovered, that alone does not give the type of evidence that you need, as I understand it. Am I stating that correctly from a medical perspective?
Yes. In this kind of study, you have to have the numbers to give the study some validity and weight. If somebody says that I cured 350 patients with hydroxychloroquine, well, 99% of those patients we're going to survive this.
Right.
Maybe 95% we're going to never have to go to the hospital there. And so it takes a tremendous number of cases before you have any kind of statistical weight to say if that's significant or not.
The problem, of course, is that there are some dangers with these medications. Am I correct in that there can be some negative side effects from this medication?
Sometimes with hydroxychloroquine, it did require a pretty hefty loading dose. And so I did hear reports of people developing tremendous headaches and refusing to take the rest of the medication, because of things of that nature. There was a concern about causing heart effects with it. And some of those concerns did get overstated. The medicines as a whole were pretty safe, but obviously not every medicine is for every person. But but still, one of the reasons you do studies is to check for those type things. Hydroxychloroquine's been around for a good long while, and we're going back to World War II time as far as helping treat malaria and such, and fortunately, Plaquenil is a fairly safe medicine, but the frustration with Plaquenil or hydroxychloroquine is it's just been found to be just really just ineffective on COVID.
Well, we all want that magic pill that's going to help cure the people that are suffering, the small percentage but large in number, as evidenced by our hospitals filling up and in some cases overflowing. And one of the things, as you already alluded to, is that we should be wearing masks. Tell me about why masks should be worn and why they're effective.
Sure. Yeah, COVID spreads by droplets. The virus rides on top of droplets to get out. And we are constantly breathing out droplets. Some people have the idea that you have to be sick in order to be putting out COVID and putting out droplets. And a good number of people are what we call asymptomatic, meaning they have no cough, they have no fever, they don't feel anything to let them know they're sick, but they've got the virus and they're putting it out. Our normal breathing, we breathe out about a half a quart of moisture every day. And so the air in front of us contains these droplets that just kind of stay suspended and are there. And the advantage of the mask is when we're wearing something here, then it prevents those droplets from getting out there and saturating the air around us. And of course, it works even better when both people are wearing a mask. But instead of those droplets just hanging and suspending out here right in front of us, the mask will block that and keep it from getting out there. State after state has passed mask mandates. There was even studies where this was done in Germany. And very consistently with wearing masks and passing the mandates, you'll have seen these numbers climbing up. And within about 5 days of the mandate, you start to see the numbers leveling off and then start coming down some. And so this has been a recurring event to actually see these numbers go up, pass the mask mandate, see them flatten out, and even start to come down. And so, the fact that mask works is already been shown over and over.
So 2 quick points here. Number one, and if people don't understand this, I think they need to. We don't wear masks necessarily to protect ourselves. we're doing it to protect those around us, our neighbors. It's the Christian thing to do. It's the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Christ said, "Love others as you love yourself." And again, most of those droplets coming from us will get blocked right there. Once those particles are out there, when we wear a mask, it will still block. It'll still block most of them, but as time goes on, those particles are floating out there. The droplets, basically they shrink in size, and so those droplets get smaller, and so the mask will have a little tougher time at that point as far as blocking it. But if you can block it from being thrust out there to begin with, it makes a huge difference. But you're exactly right. We do this. We do this for our family members. We do this for our coworkers. We do this for our neighbors. If somebody comes down with COVID, they're going to be out of work. Generally 2 weeks. And so if we're infecting somebody else, we are taking them out of the workforce. A number of people, are upset about what's happening to the workforce, and that is so understandable. But one of the reasons we wear a mask is so we can keep people employed and keep the economy going. And this is one of the engines that's helping us do this until we get a vaccine.
So they're not perfect. We're not going to keep every possible exposure from happening by wearing a mask, but we're going to prevent a lot of exposures. And the other thing is, people are concerned that they can get sick from wearing the mask themselves. I encourage people to clean their masks regularly, keep an extra mask. Are there any significant problems with people becoming sick themselves from wearing a mask, Dr. Gazzini?
You would expect, if that was a fact, you would expect to see surgeons and nurses that work in the ORs or nurses that work in the intensive care units. You would expect them to be sick all the time, and that's just not what you see. If somebody were to wear a month-old mask that had been worn every day, never washed, sure, you might get something, but that specifically hearing about somebody that had an illness related to a mask. I've not heard of it. I've asked some colleagues about that. No one else has ever heard of it either. And so that's a really overstated.
So folks, please, when you're out and about, when you're in public, when you're around other people, when you're around your neighbors, wear your mask. I want to take just a short break here. If somebody's tuned in late, to let you know, I'm Brad Bodis. I'm here with Dr. Larry Gazzini, who's a practicing physician in Birmingham, Alabama, with Brookwood Internal Medicine, sees numerous patients each and every day. At the Bond and Bodis Law Offices, we've been doing these Facebook Live events every Wednesday at 1:00 p.m. Central Standard Time. This is our 14th episode. We'll continue to do these for the indefinite future to provide information. I encourage people, and I know there are a lot of you that are having financial challenges as a result of COVID. Be proactive. Financial problems can cause anxiety. They can cause marital and family problems. So be proactive. Reach out and get some help. At our offices, we are offering absolutely free initial consultations with an experienced attorney. And for your safety, we're doing them by phone or video. Just call one of our offices, call the number that will be displayed on our screen, or go to our website to gather more information and fill out a form there. But one of our appointment specialists will talk to you, schedule a time that's good for you. And again, you can meet with an experienced attorney at no charge from the comfort of your home or office. Be proactive, folks. Now, Dr. Gazzini is here today to talk about the medical aspects of COVID, and we've covered a number of topics. The next one I have on my list here is the hospitalization and recovery rates. We touched upon this a little bit earlier, Dr. Gazzini, but one of the good things about COVID is most people, especially young, healthy people, recover. Is that correct?
That is correct. If you're under 65, chances are good you're gonna do okay. Of course, the older we get and the more health problems we have, the more chances of having something just not work out in our favor. Some of the good things with COVID is, our well, I guess, basically we've got three medicines now between the steroids, the convalescent plasma, and the remdesivir that the hospitalization rate is shrinking, is shrinking down some. So when people are hospitalized, they're generally getting out a little quicker than they were before. And then there's some things too that's just been appreciated more. One of the scary things that happens with COVID is sometimes people develop a tremendous amount of blood clotting, and the blood clotting can go on to create a number of problems. Strokes being one of them, lungs filling up with blood clot, and normally when people have blood clots in their lungs, there are clots that started off in your legs and broke off and got tangled up there, but they've seen instances where they never saw clots in the legs, but just a tremendous amount of clots in the lungs. And so, they learned to be aggressive early on with putting people on blood thinners, for this when they're hospitalized and such. And so the care for COVID patients has certainly progressed. We haven't found that silver bullet yet that will just totally stop it in its tracks and make it go away quicker, but overall the number of deaths from COVID is going down in comparison to earlier. Yeah.
Good. I talked to somebody just last night who had just recovered from COVID, and he was about our age, late 50s, or for myself, 60 now. And he mentioned that his whole family actually experienced it, that the kids that were in their late teens and 20s, the symptoms weren't that bad and they got through it pretty quickly. But he and his wife in our age group had loss of smell, some loss of taste, some terrible flu-like symptoms. He said it was one of the worst things he'd been through, but thankfully they all did recover. So, Dr. Gazzini, if the cure rate is so high, if the recovery rate is so good, why are we so concerned about COVID-19?
If we were to have a 1% mortality with this, that would still be 3,400,000 people. And so the frustration with this disease is it spreads so readily. And in some cases, it does cause significant what we call morbidity or issues. I've seen some young people in their 20s who had a fever of 103.0 or higher for 3 weeks with this. I spoke with a physician yesterday who's one of those frontline physicians in the hospital, and he was one of the unfortunate people that have come down with COVID. So far, there's been around 5,400 healthcare workers in Alabama have come down with COVID. And what you're talking about in those situations is these are frontline people that we need just day to day, but each of those people, are out for a minimum of 2 weeks there. And that's one of the big problems with COVID is it takes people out of the workforce unexpectedly for a significant length of time. Those who develop pneumonia with COVID, it sometimes takes months before you start feeling like your breathing's normal again. We see that to some degree with just our more routine pneumonias, But this one, a lot of people can tell a significant difference. Weeks and like I said, even 2 to 3 months out, they can still tell a difference, and so it has a lingering impact.
Well, it's something that I've never seen anything like in my lifetime. It's really remarkable how fast things have changed for us. Somebody said to me recently, just think it was just a few months ago that we were actually blowing on cakes and then eating them. Birthday
Yeah.
cakes, we all did that. So, what do you do if you think that you have the symptoms, COVID symptoms, and I guess you should tell us what those symptoms, what we should be concerned about, and at what point do we go get tested? At what point do we seek medical help? Give us an overview, please.
Sure. Of course, a lot of COVID symptoms are flu-like symptoms: fatigue, muscle aches, congestion. Some people feel like they have a sinus infection. Most have fever, but not everybody gets a fever with COVID. And so there's probably anywhere 25% of people who will never have a fever. I've talked to a couple of medical people that check their temperature every day for 2 weeks after they came down with it, and they never had a fever. So, but most will get fever, but again, not everybody. The cough, the congestion, it's not always. I mean, usually it's a dry cough. Often people get a heavy sensation in the chest. You mentioned the loss of smell and taste. That's actually something that can pop up with flu. It doesn't happen very often, but oh my goodness, with COVID, it's been probably around 40% or more of people who get loss of taste and smell. Some people will get upset stomach with diarrhea going on. Some people will develop. There's something out there called COVID toes, which probably has to do with clots making the toes turn blue and causing issues. But if you have any of those symptoms, it is important to get tested, because one, it's important to know if you have it, because if you have it, then you need to let people around you know that you have it. And so there's a number of testing sites out there. The Alabama Department of Public Health has a good website, and even a phone number that you can call, excuse me, and they will direct you to some of the nearby testing centers. The testing centers have been very busy. There's just been so many people getting tested that it does sometimes take several days to get a test. Some tests come back, within 24 hours. Some tests take a few days to get back. The labs are just overwhelmed with just the sheer number of this going on. One of the things we look at concerning testing is, of the people who get tested, what is the percentage of positive tests that goes along with that? And typically, we would rather see 5% or lower, with this. When the hospitals are filling up, you really want to see that get down below 10%. And for a while there, before the mask mandate, we were running up close to 17%. It's dropped since the mask mandate has come along, but we're still around the 15% level. But it is far better than it was, prior to the mandate. But information like that just helps us to just know how to be prepared, because when the hospitals get stressed, it's not just the number of ICU beds you have, but it's the number of staff that you have. You can have 1,000 ICU beds, but if you've only got staff to man 100 of them, then you're in trouble. And having enough of the right people for this type of thing is a challenge. Even in New York, they were paying nurses significant money to come up to New York to work because they needed them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to allow some time. We have some questions from some of our viewers that I want to get to for you. But, it occurred to me, I need to ask you this. At what time every morning do you get your phone call, Dr. Gazzini? Because I imagine all of the doctors in the country, in fact, in the world, must get their instructions as to what conspiracy theory you're supposed to follow that day. And of course, I'm being facetious, but please help our viewers understand how complex a conspiracy to keep a certain medication away from people must be. There's so many people just in your practice, let alone people doing the same thing elsewhere.
There's been a tremendous number of physicians that have died from COVID. So physicians aren't, allowing, their coworkers to die because of some deep, dark, secret and such. And so, yeah, those get amazing. And one of the things that's helpful too is just have a healthy amount of skepticism anytime you see these little things popping up on Facebook. Recently, there's one about claiming that Fauci knew in the early 2000s that hydroxychloroquine was a cure and a vaccine. If you read through it, it says that Fauci knew, in 2005 or so, and the people have put together this thing to look like a legitimate medical journal. But one thing to realize, number one, when you're talking about antibiotics, you talk about antibiotics as a treatment. You never talk about it as being a cure. That is just not a word that you'll see in medical journals. The other thing that's even more hilarious that makes that stand out as a fake is it says that that Fauci knew that hydroxychloroquine was a vaccine. Well, an antibiotic is not a vaccine. That is a totally different category. And so, again, when you're reading these type things, have some skepticism about it. Take the time to even check it out and see what it says. The particular article that was referring to was a lab-only test. It wasn't a test done with people or in the study. And so, again, you do just have to have a healthy amount of skepticism, because why people get their enjoyment in putting those kind of things out there is hard to fathom, but they make it sound believable. And sadly, whoever originally put that out there is just probably laughing at everybody that reposted.
Yeah. So, questions from our viewers. We have one here from Russ. He says his wife wants to know how to respond to those who say they have a medical condition that prevents them from wearing a mask.
Yeah, that is a very rare type thing. For the fun of it, one day I had my mask on. I put an oximeter on my finger that measures your oxygen count, and I walked up 6 flights of stairs, to see how much my oxygen level would drop while wearing a mask, walking up that number of again, 6 flights of stairs. My oxygen saturation, it's good if it's over 90%. I dropped from 98 to 97%, and it would have probably dropped that same amount had I just been walking up without the mask. And so the mask is not going to limit how much oxygen you can get in. Now, of course, trying to wear a mask outside would be brutal just because of the heat factor. And it does take some time to get accustomed to mask. And so when I first started wearing a mask, the 6 flights of stairs and that I go up every day, at first I was taking it off.
I was going to interrupt there for a second.
Yeah.
Just to interrupt, I want y'all to know that Dr. Gazzini does indeed walk up 6 flights of stairs every day. I've seen it. So go ahead, doctor.
Yeah. But, but after a couple of weeks, I got to where I could wear it without any difficulty. Wearing the mask, and so there is an adjustment phase that goes along with it. There is a rare person that has a severe form of sleep apnea. These people are usually tremendously obese, and they have a tendency to hold on to too much carbon dioxide. And so those people, might have a difficulty. I mean, again, it's not just routine sleep apnea, but a severe sleep apnea. And in somebody who is just hugely obese, they could have some difficulty with it to a degree. But 99.9% of us are going to do fine with the mask on.
And I would just add, just as a lay person, test some different masks. We don't all need high-end surgical masks to accomplish what Dr. Gazzini has described here, to protect others from those moistures leaving your mouth and nose. I tried different masks. Some are lighter. I've seen the gator type that slip up over your neck that even will cool your face. Some people just need to toughen up. They're not comfortable, but it's the least we can do to protect our loved ones, people we're concerned about, our neighbors from what, at a minimum, could keep them out of work for a period of time and out of the workforce, and could be a very serious, life-threatening disease. So toughen up, folks, and wear a mask. All right. I have another question.
And as you know, Brad, I was going to say, as you know, Brad, you and I were we were the two lone guys in our bowling league wearing a mask the entire night. But you can still do it. It's even with that little activity, it required a little effort, but still, we can wear our mask doing most things.
It's something I had to get used to. The mask sometimes would cause my glasses to fog up. I had to find one that was not too restrictive, that wasn't too heavy. But now that I'm used to wearing one, it's certainly not that difficult. So we have a question here, Dr. Gazzini. When will there be a vaccine?
Of course, a lot of vaccines are in the pipeline. We are hoping January, February. President Trump sometimes mentions the end of the year. His nature, he sometimes exaggerates a little bit, and that's just his nature. But hopefully, try not to predict this too far in advance. Hopefully, around February, we'll have a vaccine. And again, it'll probably be a 2-shot vaccine, two shots given a month apart from one another. And I'm guessing that we probably won't be given the all clear until we've had the second vaccine. And then I'm just guessing, because we see this with other vaccines, someone's going to probably come up with, one that's even a little better than what we've got. So, 6 to 12 months later, we'll probably be getting a booster type vaccine.
Next question, and thank you for that response. Will we be able to return to normal anytime soon?
What's going to allow us the most normal right now is wear the mask, social distance, and wash your hands frequently. Those things are kind of like a pre-vaccine in a sense. It's kind of like we can almost embrace it like a vaccine in a sense if we're doing those things. There's something called herd immunity. Herd immunity on its own will not take place naturally for another year and a half. And so that's where the vaccine helps out. Basically what we call herd immunity, or which just means enough people have antibodies to this virus so that it just doesn't spread rapidly all the time. Vaccines bring that on. That's what vaccines will do for us, is they'll bring about that herd immunity so we can get things going again. And and that's going to be a very welcome day when that happens.
I've heard you describe herd immunity in a way that was easier for me to understand. I think you said that a certain percentage of people have to have had COVID, and we're at only a very small percentage of people so far. Can you elaborate on that, maybe?
Sure. You know, gosh, when you look at the numbers, of course, I look at the numbers in Alabama a good bit, and there's well, we're probably somewhere around maybe 10 to 12% people, and I'm being generous with the numbers there, being real generous. We're probably somewhere around the 10 to 12%, and to have a good established herd immunity is going to be around 70%. Mm-hmm. So we are just starting up the first phase of the mountain, getting up to herd immunity, and so there's a long ways to go, but what will get us there in a timely fashion will be the vaccine.
Question I have: a lot of people say that when the vaccine first does come out, they're going to be cautious about taking the vaccine. Are those concerns legitimate?
There's a vaccine. One of the things that a vaccine does is it stimulates the immune system, and so sometimes we're going to feel something when we take a vaccine. I guess one of the last vaccines other than the flu vaccine that I've taken was one for shingles. There's a two-step program where there are 2 shots, 2 to 6 months apart. The first one, I felt it a little bit. About 20% of people get a pretty good reaction to it. And the second one, I got it on a Friday afternoon, and Saturday I was wiped out. I was just laid out, had to take Advil a few times that day, couldn't get out and do anything. And then by Sunday, I was okay. So vaccine on Friday, I was back to normal on Sunday. And again, vaccines stimulate the immune system. So sometimes you're going to feel something from it there. And so, of course, that's one of the fears of something like that happening. It's pretty rare to see a bad reaction to a vaccine. As far as a significant bad reaction I've seen to a vaccine, maybe once in the past 25 years.
Well, and the potential benefit is just so great to protect yourself. It just seems to me like a no-brainer. I certainly, as soon as there's a vaccine available that people like Dr. Fauci says are safe, and my friend Dr. Gazzini says is safe, then I will be taking that vaccine. We're near the end of the hour, Dr. Gazzini. I know that there are a number of other questions. If people did want to contact you, we've displayed your office phone number and your practice's website on our screen. I want to encourage people again, like with COVID, financial problems are out there for people that have been off work, people with businesses that have shut down. Address those financial problems early. Reach out for help at all of the Bond and Bodis law offices throughout Alabama, Mississippi, and the Knoxville area in Tennessee. We are offering absolutely free initial consultations. Just call the number on your screen or visit our website, and no charge whatsoever. We'll do the consultation by phone or video from the comfort and safety of your own home or office. Dr. Gazzini, is there anything I missed that you want to add at the end of the presentation?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. Just ask people to remember that instead of letting this virus manage us, we can manage the virus. Social distance, wash your hands, and wear the mask.
Wow. Great advice, great information, Dr. Gazzini. I want to thank you so much for taking your time to share the information with our viewers today. Viewers, if this is something that you think might be helpful to somebody that you know, remember that all of our Facebook Live videos reside on our Facebook pages and on our firm's website. You can refer people back here to watch this video later. But on behalf of Dr. Gazzini, on behalf of myself and all of us here at Bond and Botus, we wish you well. We thank you for tuning in today. God bless you and your neighbors. So take care of your neighbors. And Dr. Gazzini, on your behalf, as I'm going out right now,
ta-da.
Thanks for joining us.
Here we go.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.